One time, I lost my dad's hand. I was freaking out, and then I just remember him snatching me up and running. I was like, oh, thank God.
At 39, Paris Jackson is finally speaking out about rumors that have followed her since childhood. She spent her early years in public wearing a mask so no one could see her face, part of her father's attempt to shield her from a world already obsessed with her name. Then, on June 25, 2009, everything changed when Michael Jackson died, and the only life she had ever known disappeared overnight. So what really happened behind the headlines that people have believed for years? And why is she addressing it now, after so long in silence? Join us as we uncover what Paris Jackson has finally confirmed. The girl behind the mask. Paris Michael Catherine Jackson was born in Beverly Hills, California. Her mother is Debbie Rowe, a nurse who worked for Michael Jackson's dermatologist, Dr. Arnold Klein, and who had been his close friend before the two married in November 1996. The arrangement they made before the marriage was clear from the beginning. Debbie had said it was her intention, and it had been agreed upon with Michael, that he would raise the children and have full custody. When they divorced in 1999, Debbie withdrew her parental rights, and Paris grew up at Neverland Ranch with her brothers, raised solely by her father. The childhood Michael Jackson built for his children was genuinely unusual in the way that only enormous wealth combined with ferocious, protective love can produce. He made Elizabeth Taylor and Macaulay Culkin the godparents of Paris and her brother, Prince. He took them to Chuck E. Cheese and Circus and to amusement parks, all of it with their faces covered and their identities hidden from the machinery of fame that had consumed his own life almost before he had been old enough to understand what was happening to him. Paris has consistently described her father as one of the most loving and attentive parents she could have asked for. She has never wavered on this. Not through the allegations leveled against him, not through the documentaries, not through 15 years of public scrutiny that began the moment she walked into the world without that mask at his public memorial service. The picture she draws of Michael Jackson as a father, not as a celebrity or the king of pop, but as an actual dad, is of someone who was present, warm, playful, and deeply committed to giving his children something he himself never had. She told Rolling Stone in their landmark 2017 cover story something that reveals everything about how she was shaped by losing him. I live life with the mentality of, okay, I lost the only thing that has ever been important to me. So going forward, anything bad that happens can't be nearly as bad as what happened before, so I can handle it. She was 11 years old when he died, and she has been handling things ever since, in public, with a level of directness that the people around her have consistently underestimated. But before the handling came the hiding, and before the hiding came the question that has followed Paris Jackson since the moment her face first appeared on screen. A question that she has answered more times than she should ever have been asked. So what is the paternity rumor that will not go away? And what has Paris herself actually said about it? The paternity question she has answered repeatedly. The most persistent rumor that has followed Paris Jackson since she stepped into public life is not about anything she did. It is about whether the man who raised her, loved her, protected her face from cameras, and died when she was just 11 years old was actually her biological father. And the reason it persists is not that there is evidence supporting it. It is because the internet finds it interesting, and because a British actor made a claim in 2009 that the media has never fully stopped discussing, despite having no verifiable evidence to support it. In August 2009, 2 months after Michael Jackson's death, France 24 and multiple other outlets reported that Mark Lester, the former child actor who had played Oliver Twist in the 1968 film Oliver and who was also the godfather of Michael Jackson's 3 children, told Britain's News of the World that he had donated sperm to Michael Jackson and believed he could be the biological father of Paris. Mark Lester's exact words were, "I gave Michael my sperm so that he could have kids, and I believe Paris is my daughter." He said Jackson had told him he was struggling to conceive naturally, and that after a casual conversation, Mark had donated sperm at a Harley Street clinic in London in February 1996. Paris was born in April 1998. An important context often left out of retellings is that Mark later backed away from the claim. He said it was highly unlikely that he was the donor and suggested it was more probably one of Michael Jackson's doctors at the time. The man who made the claim walked it back, and yet the claim has circulated as though it were an established fact for over 15 years. Dr. Arnold Klein, Michael Jackson's dermatologist, who has been named as another possible biological father, told Good Morning America directly, "To the best of my knowledge, I am not the father of these children." Paris Jackson's response to this question has been consistent and direct across every interview and public statement she has made on the subject. In her 2017 Rolling Stone interview, she firmly dismissed any notion that her biological father was anyone other than Michael Jackson. Her brother Prince reinforced this when he described how much Paris resembled their father, telling the same outlet that the only things different would be her age and gender, and that, as a person, she is who their dad was. Paris has emphasized that even if there were any question about biology, which she has firmly rejected, it would not change who her father was. The man who raised her, who held her, who teased her about her girl crushes when she was 8 years old, who was the only parent she ever knew, is Michael Jackson. That is not a rumor, but her life. She has answered this question clearly, repeatedly, and with unmistakable emotional conviction. But the media has kept asking it as though the answer changes each time. And the same thing is true of the second rumor that has followed her, one that she addressed publicly years before the world decided to treat it as breaking news. So what did Paris Jackson actually say about her sexuality? And why did the media, that had been ignoring it for years, suddenly act shocked? The sexuality she came out about at 14. Paris Jackson came out to her family and friends as a member of the LGBTQ community at age 14. She referenced her attraction to girls in a major magazine interview when she was still a teenager. She referred to the LGBTQ community as my fellow LGBTQ on stage in front of audiences. She was photographed kissing girls in public. And then in 2018, when a fan asked her on Instagram if she was bisexual, and she responded, the media reported it as breaking news. Her reaction was not subtle. She posted on Instagram asking why people were just now saying this was news, listing everything she had already made public. I came out when I was 14. I've referred to the community as my fellow LGBTQs on stage before. I've talked about having a crush on girls when I was 8 in my Rolling Stone article. There are pictures of me kissing girls online. She was 20 years old and already exhausted by the public's inability to keep up with the information she had been sharing for years. The backstory she has told publicly about her sexuality is one of the warmer and more human stories in what has otherwise been a very difficult life. She was 8 years old when she first noticed she had a crush on a woman she saw on the cover of a magazine. When she brought this to her father's attention, not deliberately, but because Michael noticed her looking, he did not react with anger or religious disapproval or confusion. He teased her the way a loving parent teases a child about a crush, saying, "Oh, you got yourself a girlfriend." She told Rolling Stone that she was very lucky to have had that experience, especially so young, and that not many children have that. She has described it as one of the things that made her relationship with her father so specific and so irreplaceable. He saw her, all of her, and responded with warmth. On Instagram, she also pushed back against specific labels while embracing the community fully, writing that she was not bisexual, that she simply loved people for people, and that she did not label herself, and asked that nobody label her. She has since described herself in interviews as someone who falls in love with people regardless of gender or biological anatomy, which aligns most closely with pansexuality, though she has consistently declined to adopt that label because the entire point for her is that she does not define love by category. She discussed this publicly in her documentary series Unfiltered, saying she never thought she would end up with a man and has always been drawn to people across a full spectrum. She has also noted that her family still does not openly discuss her sexuality, that for them it remains taboo, which is its own kind of complicated truth about the gap between how she was raised by Michael, with total warmth and acceptance, and how the wider Jackson family has processed her identity. Her sexuality was never a secret she was keeping. It was a truth she had been sharing openly for years, while the world looked the other way, which raises a much harder question: what else has the world been looking away from? Because the public story of Paris Jackson's teen years is almost entirely made up of the wrong things being focused on, while the genuinely serious things she was living through were going largely unaddressed. So what was really happening to her in the years after she lost her father? The childhood she has been honest about, even when it was hard to hear. The most overlooked dimension of Paris Jackson's public life is the specific and documented severity of what she went through as a teenager after her father died. This is the part of her story that gets consistently pushed aside in favor of the paternity rumors and the sexuality debates and the general celebrity machinery that surrounds her name. She was 11 when Michael Jackson died. By 15, she was an intravenous drug addict, had been sexually assaulted by a stranger, and had attempted to self-harm multiple times. These are not tabloid claims or speculation. They are things she has stated publicly and specifically in multiple interviews with major publications in her own words, without being pushed or prompted. She recalled the sexual assault in her Rolling Stone interview with a directness that was striking. It was not a good experience at all, and it was really hard for her. And at the time, she did not tell anybody. A 14-year-old who had lost her father 3 years earlier, who was now navigating an enormous and unfamiliar world without him, was assaulted and kept it to herself for years because she did not know who to tell or whether anyone would believe her. Her self-harm attempts have been the subject of extraordinary honesty in her public conversations. She told Rolling Stone directly, "It was just self-hatred, low self-esteem, thinking that I couldn't do anything right, not thinking I was worthy of living anymore." The attempts were not a single crisis, but a pattern, something she described with the matter-of-fact clarity of someone who has done years of serious therapeutic work and is no longer in the place she was then, but who refuses to sanitize the reality of where she was. She was sent to a therapeutic boarding school in Utah, the kind of program that is marketed to parents as treatment and intervention for troubled teenagers. In 2020, Paris revealed publicly that the school had extensively abused her and the other students. She posted on Instagram after Paris Hilton went public about her own experiences at a similar institution, confirming that she had been diagnosed with PTSD specifically because of what happened at that school, and that she continues to have nightmares and trust issues directly connected to that experience. She has also spoken about cyberbullying in a video that went viral in 2016, in which she was visibly emotional while describing having tried every strategy available to manage the harassment directed at her online and finding none of them sufficient against the volume of cruelty that was aimed at her simply for existing publicly with the name Jackson. And she has spoken specifically about what she calls PTSD as a result of being followed by paparazzi, the particular trauma of growing up in a household where her father had shielded her from exactly this kind of relentless intrusion, and then finding herself exposed to it permanently and completely from the age of 11 onward. What is remarkable is not just that she survived these things. It is that she has chosen to speak about them honestly, while so much of the coverage around her has continued to focus on whether her father was really her father. The courage of that honesty, consistently offered over many years to an audience that did not always respond with the seriousness it deserved, is one of the most significant and least acknowledged aspects of who Paris Jackson actually is. And out of all of it, she built a career entirely on her own terms. So what has she actually created, and what does it tell us about where she is heading? The life she built. Out of all of that, the grief, the addiction, the self-harm attempts, the assault, the abusive school, the cyberbullying, the paternity rumors, and the media's years of mishandling her sexuality, Paris Jackson built something real. She did it on her own terms, in her own time, and without particularly asking for anyone's approval along the way. In January 2017, she appeared on the cover of Rolling Stone. In March 2017, she signed a modeling contract with IMG Models, one of the world's most respected agencies. She made her acting debut with a guest role on the Fox series Star and her feature film debut in Gringo in 2018. She appeared in the VH1 series Scream and in the film Habit, in which she played Jesus Christ, a casting choice that generated its own round of controversy that she handled without breaking stride. She formed a musical duo, the Soundflowers, with musician Gabriel Glenn, performing original songs and releasing a self-titled EP in 2020. She then signed a solo deal with Republic Records and released her debut album, Wilted. She told Red Table Talk that the album was inspired by heartbreak, that it was the deepest heartbreak she had ever experienced, but also one of the most powerful rebirths, and that through it, she found her voice and her sound, and embraced being a musician in a way she had not allowed herself to do before. Her relationship with her mother, Debbie Rowe, the woman who gave birth to her and then withdrew her parental rights, has been another thread she has handled with public honesty. She reconciled with Rowe when she was 15, and in 2021, on Red Table Talk, she described their current relationship as a friendship. She said it was just cool having her as a friend, that it was very chill, and that she loved that quality in their connection. It is the kind of grace that takes years of therapeutic work and genuine emotional intelligence to reach, and she described it with a simplicity that made it sound easy when it was clearly not. In 2025, she announced her engagement to music producer Justin Long, the man she had been with for 3 years. She spoke about planning the wedding with an astrologer, having a custom dress in the works, and choosing the venue. Then, on July 31st, 2025, she confirmed the split herself on social media, posting on X after being photographed crying on a walk. Rather than let the tabloids construct their own story around the image, she simply told people what was happening. "Those are breakup tears," she wrote. That, in miniature, is who Paris Jackson is, a woman who has been at the center of speculation and rumor and coverage for her entire public life, who has had things said about her, implied about her, and incorrectly reported about her for over 15 years, and who keeps choosing to tell the truth herself, in her own words, on her own timeline, without waiting for anyone's permission to do so. She has not been keeping secrets. She has been speaking. The question that remains, after everything covered in this story, is whether the people who have spent 15 years speculating about her parentage and identity have been listening at all, or whether they are simply waiting for the next headline. After hearing the full story of everything Paris Jackson has confirmed, spoken about honestly, and navigated in public across her entire young life, here are the two questions worth sitting with. Do you think the media has ever given her the credit she deserves for how directly and bravely she has handled 15 years of public scrutiny? And which part of her story surprised you the most? Drop your answer in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.